Internet. This is the April 2013 newlug Northeast Wisconsin Linux Users Group meeting, and we are talking about the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi, Model B in this case, is a small $35 computer that can fit inside of a Sega Genesis cartridge if you are so inclined and have a rotary tool, or other small cases if you don't. It runs an ARM chipset, runs a lot of different flavors of Linux, as well as a couple different other operating systems like RISC OS. Doesn't run Windows because Windows is all x86 and isn't ARM friendly, but Linux is. So good thing we're at a Linux users group meeting because this thing is pretty sweet. But yes, let me quick show you the picture that I was showing before, because one of the things that happens with, oh come on, okay.
Does it run Android too?
People are trying to run Android on it. It doesn't necessarily always work particularly well. Apparently I'm breaking up. Okay. Now I'm coming back. Alright, so in here, oh, Mike's here. Okay, so the image that I showed you earlier when we were recording but not recording was a picture of a Finnish soldier carrying a wide variety of items. And for the life of me, my computer is not keeping up to doing a hangout and doing anything else at the same time.
Oh, your microphone's, no, mine's muted.
There we go. Goodness gracious. Okay. That's what happens when you bring like a 10-year-old laptop to a lug meeting. It's like, I'm slow and single core, I can't do it. Which actually brings up a thing about the Raspberry Pi. It's a 700 megahertz ARM v6 chip. It's not the fastest CPU in the world. Can't do everything you want it to do.
512 or you?
Some of them have 256, some of them have 512. I think I have a 256. They bumped up the Model Bs to 512 after I think the first manufacturing run. Here we go. Yes, after the first manufacturing run, I think all of the Model Bs are 512. They have a user-definable video share, because a certain amount of that memory is going to be allocated to the onboard video chip, which the onboard video chip isn't bad. It can hardware render video with a fair degree of oomph, which helps them out greatly. But let's go back to the question. Why would you want a Raspberry Pi? The questions I think that you need to answer are: do you need something that runs on incredibly low power? Because the power draw on a Raspberry Pi, the Model A and the Model B, are quite low, to the point that it can be run on battery power, even solar power, depending on how big of a battery the solar power is running from. It also depends on how many devices are hooked up to your device, because they are going to draw from the power that you're getting from. The next thing is size. It is quite small, and so it can fit into a lot of places that a computer, quote unquote, as you would traditionally think of it, wouldn't go. So there have been people that put it into the professional photographer that put it into the little holder underneath his camera, and so he actually has a PC that can do a variety of things like upload his pictures directly to the web, and it can also control his camera via a web interface, and a lot of interesting things, and that's pretty cool. So you could put it into a car and have it run Linux inside of your car if you want to. You can put it inside of I mean, people have done a lot of stuff with the Raspberry Pi. So if you have a particular size or power reason for using a Raspberry Pi, it's a good idea. Cost. It's relatively cheap for the board, which is both good and bad. Because when you look at the Raspberry Pi, you think of it as being this cute little board. Oh my goodness, it's so small. Like, wow, you can bring that anywhere because it's so tiny and it's so cute. Oh yeah, we can show it.
Can you show the hangout?
Hangout people, hangout people. Here it is. It's the Raspberry Pi. It's so cute. It's so little, like a cute little kitten. All right, so the thing about the Raspberry Pi is, come on, it's like that guy in the Finnish army, where he's a soldier, and in and of itself he's relatively, one would say, agile. But adding on to, come on, inputs. Okay, adding on to himself, he has all sorts of different accessories. He's ready for any situation. And he looks like a total fool because he's obviously over-encumbered and is not really well suited for any one particular task because he's encumbered with all sorts of crazy crap. And honestly, what some people end up doing with the Raspberry Pi ends up being over-encumbered for the task that they're talking about. Back to one of the positive things about the Raspberry Pi. If you've ever heard about GPIOs, that means general purpose in-out, the ability to address things directly to the Raspberry Pi. These pins right here, you can hook stuff directly to, like LCD panels. You can turn on the power and turn off the power via the GPIOs. There's a variety of really cool stuff. There's a project called, I believe it's called RetroPie, and RetroPie has a case as well as a GPIO hookup that allows you to hook up Super Nintendo controllers directly to the pins. And so instead of using the integrated USB, you can use the GPIOs, and then you don't have to use the USB, which saves you some space because you only have 2 ports. The other thing about the Raspberry Pi, talking about the negatives, is, let's just look at the setup we've got here. I'm gonna pick up the camera and just show you the rat's nest of cables we have here. We have the Raspberry Pi. We've got the composite video cable, the headphone adapter to RCA out. We've got a USB cable that's being used for power, micro USB. We have a USB keyboard, what was attempted to be a wireless keyboard that didn't connect. We have the quote-unquote portable DVD screen, which I was using earlier. And let's see. Oh, the other thing that we have is, because the Raspberry Pi does not have a power switch, I obtained a USB power switch that allows me to turn it on and off. I will not turn it off right now because that would cause system corruption, and that'd be bad. But if the USB device that you're using doesn't have enough power, what you need to use is a powered hub, which then you have to plug in again. And as you see, counting the projector, I have 5 items hooked up to this power strip already, counting my laptop, which used 1, the projector, and then the Raspberry Pi is using the other 3, because I've got a screen, the Raspberry Pi itself, and boy, oh, and you, great, Tim, using 1 whole power thing. How dare you? Be considerate of the other people here. One of the other things that you can use is this, which is a PS2 to USB adapter in order to use both the USB or a PS2 keyboard and a PS2 mouse at the same time, in order to have keyboard and mouse at the same time, but retain an extra USB slot because You might want to use wireless internet or something. But but every single time I hook up the Raspberry Pi, it feels like I'm put it on life support because it's got so many things sticking out of it just to function. At least as a desktop. If I need to be putting something into it, it's got so much stuff attached to it that it ends up being not so cute and little anymore. It ends up being unwieldy with a variety of things sticking out of it, which is not as cute and not as awesome. And then sometimes the screensaver turns on. Whatever, doesn't matter. So, goodness gracious, computer. Okay.
I heard people using it like for video streaming or
This is the key. If you have a very specific purpose that you want to use the Raspberry Pi for, go for it. It's really cool to be able to use it for a specific thing. And there are a variety of people that have done this. For example, if you go to Raspberry Pi Disk Images, I think it's .com, there's actually a guy who is collating the different SD card images because changing operating systems is as easy as changing the SD card because there's no onboard memory or no onboard flash on this device. There's just, it boots directly from the secure digital card directly into the operating system, which sucks and is cool. It sucks because you're literally running the entire operating system off of an SD card, so you're going to be limited to the speed that an SD card can go, which for some things is bad. But if you have 2 or 3 things that you want to do, you could have, for example, RASP XBMC, which is XBMC for the Raspberry Pi, which allows you to have basically a smart TV streaming interface to watch videos and do all the things that XBMC can do. Then you could shut down the Raspberry Pi cleanly, take that out, put Raspbian in, and then you have basically a Debian environment that's optimized for the Raspberry Pi. You could then take that out and put in, let's say, I know there's a penetration testing operating system that they're working on. There's crap loads of, for example, are you afraid of overloading the power supply with all that junk hanging off of it? Yeah, maybe. No, there's not that much stuff connected to it that's drawing power, just a USB keyboard and a wireless adapter that is not working, so I'm going to remove. But, so...
Can you use a USB hard disk?
Can you use a USB hard disk? This is a good question. If it is a USB hard disk that does not take power directly from the Raspberry Pi, yes. If
Then you use the
You can probably use a powered hub.
you can use a powered hub and put it through there.
Yeah.
So or you could have it powered through some other means. It's not as easy as taking, for example, a 2.5-inch notebook drive that is powered through USB and is sticking it directly into the Raspberry Pi, because that draw is going to be too much for the machine. And so the original thought of, oh cool, I could just hook a 1 gig Western Digital thing that I bought from Best Buy directly to it, and I'll have a computer with a gig of hard drive, and it'll be great. And no, that's not how it works. You are going to have to be very vigilant about the wattage that's being drawn from the USB ports, unless you're going to hook it up to a powered USB hub. And then that's one other. I mean, I didn't even hook that up. That's these cables here. And obviously I don't have enough cables right now, so I really like to, to kick that up a notch and set up something else.
Can you use a USB flash drive?
Yes, you can use a USB flash drive. I believe it varies from drive to drive as far as the power consumption, as far as how well it works. I think you can. I haven't done a lot. Let's see. Thomas's picture is very dark. Oh, but Thomas isn't here, so that's not a big deal. Sorry, I was just reading the Google Hangout comments.
Did you send me an invitation, by the way?
Sure.
Or is it a public one where I can just find it on?
No, I can invite you. If you're in newlug, I've already invited you, but I can.
Really?
Well, yeah. When I say in newlug, I mean have you added newlug from Google Plus and have
Add the circles.
yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Let me just do it that way. Go ahead.
Yeah, because it should be on your feed.
Okay.
For the life of me, I can't think of your last name because I'm thinking Telecom Tom.
Stop.
There we go.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta change that.
Yeah. That's right.
I have invited you personally to the Hangout just in case. Okay.
Right. When you say join newlug, you mean follow or what?
Yeah, follow newlug. Newlug follows you back. Then you're both in circles and you're good to go.
Okay. All right.
So, Raspberry Pi again. We've talked about some of the good stuff, some of the bad stuff. I mean, if you are creative, well, let's talk about some of the awesome things about the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi and the community around it is freaking spectacular. There are some people that know very little about the Raspberry Pi and ask questions like, can you put Android and Ubuntu on a SD card for me and send it to me, please? Where the answer to that is no, because Ubuntu doesn't currently run on the Raspberry Pi because it's ARM6 instead of the more traditional ARM, I think ARM9 chipset. So it doesn't have hard floating point support? Something about
a friend of mine working on, I don't remember the fine points, but he says that there was a complete shakeup on the way that the ARM is supported. He says that there were so many different ones, and now they got a new system where they have like one ARM with different kernels for the specific processors.
Yeah, and this is a cheaper, quote unquote, older chipset. It's ARM v6. And so it doesn't have this support of the quote-unquote ARM things. So, for example, Ubuntu has an ARM port, but the ARM port of Ubuntu doesn't work on the Raspberry Pi.
Right, but I think the new one, like in Wheezy, I believe, the upcoming, Debian, I think they're going to the new one where you've got to just get the right kernel for the ARM, for the particular ARM processor you're running.
This Pi is running Raspbian, which is a Debian offshoot. So I mean, the Debian packages work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as simple as saying it's ARM, so anything for ARM will work. It's not that simple.
Well, he was saying it was fragmented. Is that they had a completely separate distribution for every variation of the ARM, and there are a great number of them.
Large numbers.
And that was somebody decided this is nuts. It's coming to an end.
Yeah, and I'm glad because the current ARM kind of world is, if you're coming from x86, you go to DistroWatch and anything that's there, pretty much with the exception of PowerPC stuff, you can put it onto a USB disk or a DVD, load it in, install it, and go. From the x86 world, it's kind of foreign to have something like not be supported with your architecture. And with the Raspberry Pi and the ARM6, you have to think about your architecture a lot, and you have to think about resource management a lot, and you have to think about recompiling things from source a lot, because not a lot of the stuff is available. Back to the awesome community, though, there are people that Tim says, can you use a webcam on Raspberry Pi? Yes. I know that there's actually a camera module that they're in the process of trying to come out with. There's actually a one of these two yellow things is for a camera to be actually connected to directly, and then that one is going to be an HD webcam, which would be supported HD, and you wouldn't have to use the USB.
Point at that again.
It's one of these. One of these is a DSI connector, and the other one's the webcam connector. The DSI is for LCD panels, and the webcam is for the Raspberry Pi webcam. The theory of that is super cool, and I was totally bought in on that. Like, you know, I would just find an LCD panel and hook it up, and it would just work. And it's not how it works. Like, it's, you know, when you're finding an open frame LCD panel, you have to be super specific about the connectors, and you have to be super specific about the drivers. And so, if you don't want to do the work yourself, and you just want to plug it in and have it work, that might not be for you. And, you know, and that's okay. It's just, you know, this totally enables people to do projects like that. But if that's not the project you want to do, then this isn't the hardware for you. So, you know, that's the big thing.
That's what I heard, the thinking of them doing the Raspberry Pis,
Yeah.
to get people thinking, like, starting out with computers and going from there.
Yeah, and you know,
And as you know,
as a choice, they've done a pretty good job at having rough edges that'll kind of stick together. You know, there are a lot of projects where, you know, one guy wants to have a build of MAME run so that he can run arcade cabinets off a Raspberry Pi. Great. There was a guy that I found on Google Plus who hooked up a 12 character by 2 line LCD panel, like the real low tech
like-
LCD panel,
like
and an RFID reader via USB, and he has it set up as a and then he has maybe a 4-inch LCD screen, something around this size, and he has it all in one enclosure, and they use it for I believe they use it for a library, signing things in and out of a library, because everything is RFID enabled, and that's super cool. Like if you're super focused and you say, I want to do this and I need to interact in these particular ways, and I know I'm probably going to have to write a little bit of code to get it all glued together, but these are the inputs I want to work with, these are the outputs I want. You can make a Raspberry Pi do awesome things, but you have to be pretty laser focused on what you want to do, or else you'll end up with this. You know, if you're saying, I want to buy a Raspberry Pi and I want to basically replicate the desktop experience, go buy a used laptop. Literally, because after spending, assuming you're a person with nothing, you buy $35 Raspberry Pi plus shipping, USB cable, let's say it's $5, USB power or AC adapter, $2, SD card, $5 to $10, one. Assuming that you don't want to run more than one operating system, which is one of the reasons that you would have a Raspberry Pi. USB keyboard if you don't have one, $5. You know, a case, assuming you don't make one for yourself, using a 3D printer or an old Genesis cartridge. Okay, best case scenario, you have a Dremel and you have an old Genesis cartridge, and so you buy it for $2. Your case still costs $2. You know, you hook all of these things together, and all of a sudden this $35 computer, once you get a screen and a keyboard and your cables and your power, it ends up costing closer to $100. And that's a completely different setup. You can get this laptop on eBay for less than $100. And this is a IBM X41 tablet with 14-inch screen with a digitizer input. Linux friendly, because ThinkPad has been historically very Linux friendly. So if you just want a device that you can bring somewhere and that will work with almost anything, buy an x86 ThinkPad. I don't see the image, but Raspberry Pi Lego case. You can make your case out of Lego, but how much do Legos cost? Legos are freaking expensive, man.
Right.
So I mean, if you've got a big box, that big box is worth $60 if you want to buy it off of eBay. But if it's already there, sure, put together your case out of Legos. Great, that's totally cool. But there are people. Let's say one of the things that the Raspberry Pi has that I am not using is HDMI out. The two outputs that it has are composite out, regular AV, and HDMI out. What you notice is that it doesn't have VGA out. A lot of cheap monitors are VGA only. So I've got a basement full of monitors that use VGA. I do not have a lot of monitors that use HDMI or DVI, because you can get a DVI to HDMI adapter, but that's another thing that you have to buy, even if you get it for mono price, which costs like $4 plus shipping. That's the thing, it's, you almost want to call it the Raspberry Pi plus shipping, because almost everything you want, you're like, oh, one part that would be really cool, and then you find it, and then you pay the shipping, and it's $6 to ship, and you end up, I don't want to say in the poorhouse, but it's easily something that you can say, oh, I just need to buy one more thing because that would be cool. And if you don't have a specific project in mind, you'll find that you've bought 60, 70, 80, 90 more dollars in accessories for something that, for a task that could have been fulfilled by an inexpensive laptop if you didn't have the power and size limitations of having it fit inside of this small area. So,
but for projects, it's ideal for like a media streamer or something like that.
It's super ideal for a media streamer if you want to interact with self-powered servos or any sort of real-world sensors, assuming the sensor isn't USB and you want to go directly into GPIOs. You have hardware access on this that is unparalleled in comparison to a laptop. Unless you can get USB, then you can just use a regular laptop. But that's your big thing. You figure out what you want to do with it, and figure out. So, for example, there are people that buy a Raspberry Pi for $30, and then they go out and buy a Lilliput HDMI 7-inch field monitor that like photographers use when they go to weddings.
Okay.
But that field monitor costs $250. Because you need to get the one with HDMI input, not the old Lilliputs with the VGA, or the composite. But if you get the composite, then you only get 640 by 480, and then then everything, it's like playing with Fisher Price pixels because they're so big. So if you want more pixels, and you want something resembling a real desktop in a mobile form, then you're talking about dropping some serious money on a screen, and it's no longer really a $35 PC if you're spending $200 on the monitor that it hooks up to.
But it's customizable.
It's super customizable, and that's great. And again, I have a Raspberry Pi. I like it. I'm just not saying that it's not the end all be all. It's not it's not the cure for every computing problem. I'm totally okay with people going to a computer recycler, finding a Linux desktop or a Linux laptop, or finding a desktop or a laptop, installing Linux on it, and hacking around. And if you're giving it, because one of the things about the Raspberry Pi is you say, oh, you give it to a kid, and they'll do awesome things. I mean, it does run Minecraft, and you can run with Python, and so there are some really cool, very specific things that it can do. But when your kid says, "Great, I'm done with playing Minecraft. Now I want to play BioShock," this thing is not going to play. Well, BioShock is Windows only, but now I want to play FTL. I mean, because we were talking about Linux games. A lot of Linux games won't run on this. Some will, but not all of them.
I still think it's the biggest forte is control type applications.
Absolutely.
Like a friend of mine, he's thinking of using it right now. He's saying, okay, I'm going to have a whole string of temperature sensors, hook it to the Raspberry Pi, get a power supply, put a USB Wi-Fi deal into the thing, and you can go to a centralized server. In fact, I think he may even put a database like Postgres on the Raspberry Pi. There is no user interface. There is no display. There is no keyboard. There is no mouse.
Yep, and that's one of the
and it's
ideal
vastly
setups.
Overkill.
Exactly.
But it's cheap.
That's comparing this to an Arduino. This is an absolute workhorse.
Well, in this case, the beauty is it has a real network, real network stack, the scheduler, all the little goodies.
You can run
way
cron
overkill,
jobs on
but
this.
plenty good.
If you're looking for a headless Linux box to run cron jobs, and maybe you hook up one USB webcam to take pictures of your front yard, Or you hook it up to one moisture sensor at your cabin, and you put it in your basement, and you have it, once every 6 hours, you have it check the moisture sensor, and if the moisture sensor says water, then you have it send you an email that says, there's water in your cabin, in your basement. Go to your cabin.
What if you wanted checking every 5 seconds, every minute?
Well, still okay.
It's a 700. It's
But also,
approximately, it's
but
7
also if
times
you
faster
designed
than
it
a
right,
laptop.
it also would work quite well in that application. You'd say, okay, if you do a PC, but this thing you could have a little battery on it with maybe with a charger and such. And if you want to, if you had it programmed right to draw as minimal power as possible, it'd probably go for a week or so, or weeks,
Yeah, but
depending on how big
solar
your
power.
battery
Or-
was,
yeah.
without
Or you
if
can
the
hook
power
it
went
up.
out.
If you're close enough to a window, you can do it through solar power.
Sure.
So
But I mean, to protect your basement, let's just say every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds,
Sure.
every minute, whatever.
right.
And you're not going to dump everything into a big log.
Right.
You just
Right.
wanted to set an alarm,
Right.
send you.
And I don't know any
message.
specifics about the Raspberry Pi, but those processors, they're designed to be able to be pushed into very low power states.
Yeah, you can do that. And that's where a Raspberry Pi is going to excel.
That's what
It's going to be absolutely incredible
That's what I
for
wanted.
those
It
types
is,
of things.
it is vastly overkill, but you have a full real operating system to
Well, yeah.
work with,
Yep.
Right.
and it makes it easy.
Then you can write that all in Python instead of writing it in machine code or
Right,
or
right,
C++
right.
or whatever.
Right.
You can use a higher level programming language to do the things that you're wanting to do, and
Right.
then
Even if you write
change.
it and see it, it's a whole lot easier environment to work
Well,
in.
that's what I'm saying.
Instead of going with the Arduino, for example.
Right. Well, let's say, for example, there's something called Pi UI. A guy in, I believe, England. Let's see. I'm super slow.
Tim's you've still got that fiber?
Okay.
Pi
So,
UI. Oh,
Pi
Pi-
UI.
Is that Python? Is that what you said?
it's the Raspberry Pi user interface. So.
Oh.
So what a guy broke his leg. David Singleton is his name. Shout out to David Singleton. So he was sitting around, he had a broken leg. He was like, what am I gonna do? I've got a Raspberry Pi, I've got a mobile phone. How about I have them work together? So
Was it just a mobile phone, not a smartphone?
I think it's a smartphone. Anything with a web.
I
Yeah, he's got
iPhone or
I think he's got a mobile app for
okay.
Android, but anything with a mobile browser, so even feature phones. But basically, he basically put Python hooks into being able to, with a couple lines. Well, literally, it's 10 lines of code. Those 10 lines of Python code create a mobile web page that can interact with your Raspberry Pi via either a web browser, mobile browser, or a smartphone. And so with, let's say, 20 lines of Python code, you're looking at that basement humidity sensor on your web page at work or with your mobile phone, assuming that your mobile phone has web access, or with an Android app. And you also have the ability
This
to...
has a web browser.
Yeah, it has a web. So if it has a web browser, it'll probably come up. And you have limited functionality to interact with it as well. It will take input from your mobile phone or that web page and toss it back to your Raspberry Pi as well. So
it's not only for you can also perform actions.
right,
With
it's
the
not
Raspberry Pi.
simply informative. It's also interactive. So you can, if you hook up. You can hook up any. I mean, there are people that hooked up a online or a drink mixer, like a bartender. They hooked it up to a bunch of servos and what is it? Somewhere between 4 and 16 different types of liquors, and so then they would tell the Raspberry Pi, make me a mudslide, and it
Right.
would make them a mudslide, or make me a brandy old fashioned. And
So
it would
it's
make
not
them a
just
brandy old
sensors.
fashioned. Yeah.
It's what do they call that? Actuators.
Yeah.
It also, it can perform, Raspberry Pi can put out a signal onto a line or something to do something.
It can definitely communicate. It's it's
No,
not.
well, I mean, not just to communicate, but just to actually activate a mechanism
Mhm.
that's
Well, I mean,
connected to it.
yeah, there's analog outputs. So I mean, you can the GPIOs are general purpose. So it won't run, a big action. It won't. What is it? Are actuators the ones that move?
It's servos.
So it won't.
Servo.
Yeah.
Well, you mean driver or some, some
Right.
drivers.
You like if it's a huge servo and it takes a lot of power, the Raspberry Pi isn't going to power it, but it can tell it what to do.
You have a module that sits on it.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
turns it.
There are 3D print. One of the things that was about the Raspberry Pi that people were excited about was 3D printing, where you could use a Raspberry Pi to interface with a 3D printer, and so that would be
right now it's Arduino, isn't it?
right now it's Arduino, and it's the Arduino
Arduino.
basically takes the STL file and just converts it into something workable and goes from there. But theoretically, you would have more interactivity because you literally have a computer connected to the 3D printer instead of, slightly less.
I'm thinking about using it for my modular robot.
Yeah, I mean, the
So it's
robot
going to
head
be
is
the brain.
yeah, the brain of a robot head is a cool thing. But yeah, if you want to do Raspberry Pi, awesome. Just make sure you have a task in mind that the Raspberry Pi is best for, and do that. Because there are plenty of cool things to do. Just it's not meant to replace a laptop, so don't try to make it do that. Make it do the things that it can do very well, and astonish and impress people, rather than making it do something that it does poorly, like when I was showing you the Raspbian desktop and trying to show you the rough equivalent of trying to run a Linux desktop on a machine that is theoretically equipped to do it, but not very well. So yeah, you guys got any questions about the Pi? You got Pi questions? I mean, and one thing,
Yeah.
if you're looking for things to do, Google search Raspberry Pi cool projects, cool cases, cool things, because plenty of people have done really awesome stuff with it. They've put it into it. I think there's a guy that put it into a Nintendo 64 cartridge. I put mine into a Genesis cartridge. I'm pretty sure there's somebody that put it in one inside of a Nintendo. You name it, people are putting a Raspberry Pi inside of it and doing interesting stuff with it as well. So there are plenty of project ideas out there. Raspberry Pi Disk Images gives you a general idea of the pre-rendered disk images that can allow you to just write the image to SD and go, rather than trying to start from Raspbian or something else to custom make it yourself. So it's depending on what you want to do. There might already be a community that's trying to do it. So rather than reinventing the wheel, just doing it might be better. So let's see. Do we have any case? Okay, someone create a Linux-based conference center. I'm assuming we're talking about the Hangouts. Yeah. So yes, questions from the Hangout. Do we have any questions from beyond in the intertubes? Apparently, our Hangout is choking the bandwidth of the comfort suites ever so slightly. Because we have how many people in here on there? 3?
I just got off.
Okay.
I was heating up, my machine's heating up too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people in here, and a fair number of them are in this room. But yes, and in conclusion, Raspberry Pi is awesome. Use it for good. Don't use it for meh.
Moral lesson.
I mean,
Yes,
yeah.
That's good. That's
It's
good.
it's a really good tool.
Awesome power,
Yeah.
awesome responsibility.
Yes, with the power of the Raspberry Pi, you have the responsibility of not doing something stupid with it. Although there are plenty of people doing stupid stuff with the Raspberry Pi, feel free to search online. There's probably some people that are doing it. But yeah, it's just try to be smart about the things that you're doing. Use the right tool for the job. The Raspberry Pi is a really cool tool.
Be good.
Yeah.
Don't get seduced by the dark side of the force.
Don't be seduced by the dark side of Raspberry Pi.
Right.
I mean, honestly, if you're okay, if you do want to spend a lot of money on Raspberry Pi stuff, Adafruit. Adafruit is the people that you want to talk about
the
because
girl, the young woman from
Lady Ada
MIT,
Lamore
yeah.
Freed, yes, from
Okay.
MIT. They are super into supporting the Raspberry Pi. They have a Raspberry Pi learning system that is a web-enabled programming setup. That is I don't want to say kid-friendly. Well, it's kid-friendly. It's designed to help get children into programming, to provide a relatively easy interface to working with relatively powerful hardware in the grand scheme of things. Oh no! We lost the Hangout.
The connection was lost. Ah.
Yeah. Oh well.
I'm still
Bye, Hangout people. Well, at least you're in, so you can tell them my final comments. But
okay,
yeah,
okay,
it's
okay.
use
I wonder
the right
if
tool for the
we
job.
killed the thing. I know I lost connection too. I wonder
Yeah.
if they
But
if
yes,
they just
Ah!
killed the.
I don't know what happened there. But yes, thank you, interwebs. With that, we salute you and give you the responsibility because the power is yours.